Hey, good morning, Guam, and welcome to Hot Topic. Of course, my in-studio guest is none other than Senator Wil Castro. Good morning, Senator Wil. How you doing, man?
Today, Senator, thank you for the opportunity.
I gotta say, yeah, of course, I've got to formally introduce Wil, because when there's a wheels, there's a ways, right? So, of course, you the top Republican vote getter this past election. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We haven't been on radio or basically live streaming after your election.
That's right.
That's right. We've been on radio, but not
well, that's good because we have a lot to catch up
That's
with.
right. Dynamic, educated, well experienced, and actually, here's one guy. If you call his office, and they say he's out in the field, he's literally out in the field because he takes his office out in the field, and you see the trapotne, okay, the canopy, and he's under that, and constituents are stopping by, and he's making it very easy for a constituent to just pull over and say, hey, drive through Wil's office. But anyway, tell us about we're going on 100 days here, okay? Tell us. This first 100 days, I mean, then I want to ask you about some challenging things that are happening in the legislature, just even on the onset.
Well, it's been a challenge. First of all, thank you. Thank you so much to the studios and to your listenership for the support and for the constructive criticism. It's been a challenge. We're talking about even up until the day of inauguration, we didn't have, I don't think we had a single furniture item. We had folding tables, a couple folding chairs we took from home, and it was a learning experience for the team to get settled in. Right? It didn't come with training wheels, right?
No, absolutely.
And so we've kept ourselves very busy. From maybe if you look at it from three standpoints, of course we've done some policy work. You know all too well that a big part of this office is doing the constituency work, and then also kind of doing some advocacy work for the community. So with the first part of that, the policy work, being in the minority and not being the standard bearer of the party, I had the distinct flexibility to travel on federal money or through private grants and meet with 3 different territorial governors. I met with the American Samoa governor. Of course, I met with Governor Cavo. And I met with the CNMI Governor Ralph Torres. I've also had the privilege to meet at least 24 lawmakers from Hawaii, Guam, the CNMI, American Samoa, and some of these policy opportunities allowed me to network with about 3 to 4 dozen federal officials. And in addition to that, I can go back to each of these points. We have about 5 pieces of draft legislation in the docket, so to speak, in the burner. We're looking at the Angel Yambro Santos Humanitarian Disaster Relief Fund. We can talk about that. I, as recent as yesterday morning with the Chair of Education and the Superintendent of DOE, we're looking at some major reform legislation, a seminal piece for education. We're also looking, we had a roundtable last week on the Marine Resource Conservation Act, and I'd like to share some of the really interesting facts going on in that natural resource community. And then I had a conversation with a Democrat yesterday, hoping to garner some support on what we're going to title the Marianas Cybersecurity Act. And then, of course, still in the policy realm, I'm working with some lawmakers across the river in the CNMI, so to speak, on some reciprocation initiatives, things like reciprocity for the driver's license, some other topics, not very new, but definitely, certainly, you can't run out of those opportunities for trade, free trade, and food security. And then the medical referral office is always an issue for both communities, and we're finding we're consistently having a discussion on how to leverage those very limited resources, Senator. And the last one would be we'll be announcing next week the Marianas Caucus on Natural Resources.
Now let me ask you this, because that's great. I mean, in regards to collaboration with, of course, other governors in other island nations as well as that, and how we can again better network. But in your collaboration with these governors from the other areas, I mean, we have the insular areas, of course, have great challenges in regards to how again the federal government has viewed us. And their delivery of supposedly contractual agreements that we've had with the insular areas. Now, are you working towards, again, not only the networking with those areas, but networking and coming together as not just Guam, the one Guam approach, but the one insular approach in regards to again moving forward and say, hey, you have to deal with us. You have to deal with us.
Yeah, the short answer is yes, but I may not necessarily agree that the federal government in its totality is looking at our island or even the other territories in a particular way. I really, I don't sense that. My discussions with these federal agencies and our partners from the territory areas, actually, there's an entire shift going on right now. And so what we're attempting to do is repurpose the content. My primary purpose at the time of the visit was twofold. The first was to sustain existing financial resources that are coming into the territory, particularly for the natural resource environments, marine resources, coral, coastal fisheries resources. The administration, the Trump administration, is looking at some major cutbacks, and we're certainly hoping that we can tell our story and definitely make a case as to why it's important to sustain those resources this far out west in the Pacific. So to your second point though, yes, Jesse, we are. We're not doing it in reaction to how they're viewing us, so to speak, but we're doing it out of a concerted effort and obvious need to power network. I'll give you an example. I'll give you two examples. Each year there's always competitive federal funding opportunities. And so I think if the three territories come together, and this is not new, but I think we can do a better job if we work closely with the administration and other stakeholders to submit a joint financial package for funding. For example, coastal resiliency would be one. I know that the chances of us getting this competitive award increases significantly if we work with the other jurisdictions. That's one. Now, more to the issue of advocacy for the territories. Yeah, I had a really fruitful discussion with a federal official relative to agriculture, and I want to tell you that I'll be crafting a letter, it's going through its second review, that petitions the secretary who's responsible for agriculture to basically say that the territories petition that a director for the U.S. Department of Agriculture be established for the territories. And because my point would be this, Senator, I'm not as interested in what Hawaii can do for the territories, or the Marianas, or Guam in particular, more than I am what we can do for ourselves out here in the Marianas. We know that there's a director who's responsible for the state of Hawaii and the insular areas west of Hawaii and southwest. So I think we can make the case for a director of the insular territories and rotate that office.
And that's what I mean in regards to lifting some of these federal restrictions that actually get a basically big, as they say in Chamorro, putting balakuas, right? You know, and if they relieve some of these things, we can be more self-sufficient. But let me shift for that, because we've got to take a quick break with this, but we'll talk about it when we come back from the break. But you've literally gone out to the field. You were literally out there on the field. And folks, I know some folks that have personally come and stopped by and say, hey, I saw him there. It's an opportunity for me to stop and talk to a senator. So when you literally take your office out on the field and people stop by, what do they talk to you about?
Gosh, Senator, it's a wide range. I don't think you have a bucket big enough to capture or encapsulate all that they bring out. I'll give you a couple very clear examples. We're talking about infrastructure. We're talking about even a 7-year-old who would come out who undergoes dialysis three times a day, whose father is not working and doesn't have a stay-at-home mother. And so these people are appealing for any kind of financial assistance or even advocacy on their behalf. And then I was in Agate when that happened. And, she came up to us, and you have to stay strong because they're looking for confidence and support. But we did go up the next day and bring some resources to them. So I'd be happy to capitalize on that tomorrow.
And as a matter of fact, we're going to take a quick break right now. We're going to continue, of course, with our folks on the live stream. We'll continue with them as well. But for the radio folks, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with Senator Wil Castro right here on Hot Topic. So Senator,
you want to get back to that more? You want to
okay. So anyway, in regards to some of the things that people talk about when you meet with them. Yes.
Sure. So again, going back to that little girl, she's beautiful, our princess. That was one example of a real humanitarian need. I'll give you another example of a bar owner who asked a great question when we were in Paget. Right? She said, Will, they changed the hours for clubbing or going out from 4 a.m. to 2 a.m. And you know what? All it's done was create an underground market of folks going to the bars. As a matter of fact, us club owners are willing to pay a premium dollar amount for an additional cabaret license, if you want to call it that.
Sure.
And we will guarantee that security at a minimum level will be provided. So that's another example of some things that people bring up. And then, of course, You have issues affecting the veterans when they come forward, and you have issues affecting relative to education, and you also have issues like this one small business owner who doesn't want to be named, who said she can't afford insurance, and she's a sole proprietor, and she's been here for 20 years, and she just can't afford insurance. It costs $3,000 a month, and it's ridiculous. So the petition was, what can I do? Actually, she even asked that I not respond. She said, just do something about it if you can. And I know that there's bipartisan effort and support for new legislation that's before the 34th Guam legislature to be able to provide just that.
I'm glad you said that these consequences that are a result of unintended, I guess, unintended you can call them, but you say an underground market has come about, right? So underground markets are normally people or organizations that are probably not licensed, officially licensed, and therefore don't contribute to taxes.
Well, that's right. No, that's definitely one of the other consequences. But the real implication there is now you have an unregulated environment where people's health and safety.
Absolutely. Unregulated, unlicensed, then they don't contribute again to the taxes and things like that. So these are the things again as we Queen and I have been very critical again all the time in regards to the. Of course, the legislature becoming, the moral police. I mean, I voted for you not to be my moral keeper, okay, but to be my lawmaker. Represent me. Not necessarily. I mean, I think my mom and dad did a fairly good job in raising. I'm sure, and you did too as well, right? And I don't think when I was in office, they relied on me to tell you how old you need to be to do a certain thing. I think in general, we came to the conclusion that when we came to a certain age, we could decide for ourselves.
And I agree with you. I brought this is my personal philosophy, and I brought it into our office, and it's this. My personal and professional legislative philosophy is this: the further you stay out of my bedroom, the better off I am as an individual in this community. At the same time, we should all be responsible for our actions or inactions. So I agree.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, speaking of the Love Fest Center, you actually have a shout out. John Blas says Biba Nyao.
John Blas is a fellow Harley rider. He's one of the managers at a hotel, which will remain unnamed. His father is Joe Blas, and he happens to be the first cousin to Deborah, actually second cousin to Deborah Cabrera, my partner.
So you also have a nice shout out from Therese Kitsutu. She says, all good, Senator Wil, keep up the great work.
Thank you very much, Therese. I appreciate it.
And that's why we get along. You're a Harley rider?
I am.
Holly rider or Harley rider?
Harley.
Harley rider.
Not enough time to get on my bike.
I used to actually. I sold my bike a couple years ago. It came to the point that they were, gotta fix our roads, brother.
I agree. But you know what? I haven't gone on record yet, but I am looking for an opportunity for an additional reprieve for any type of two-wheeled vehicles that help reduce your carbon footprint. So whether you're a bike rider or a Harley rider, I think there's something to be said for that.
Is there anything else other than a Harley?
Come on. All kinds of
okay.
good bikes.
We're being a little biased here. But see, there's good politician there. There you go. But let's get back to this to our conversation.
Sure, I'll give you another example of a constituent case that that actually inspired the Angel Santos Humanitarian Disaster Relief Act, and whether or not it stands the muster of law, I don't know, but I know this. There is a family in Talafofo at a four-way intersection. And as a result of the lack of updates to the infrastructure and actually a prior reported clogging, right, for the sewage, and inaction on the part of the government or an instrumentality of the government, all this raw sewage, Senator, backed up into their house. Again, we're talking about coming out of the toilets, out of the shower, out of the kitchen, okay? And there are two minor children there. We're talking children below the age of 10, and a family, and they were displaced. And there was nothing that the government was able to do except for a very minor reprieve. Now you got to remember, think back, and why I'm so biased and so pulled by this. So I was the victim of a house fire, and there was no real disaster relief and assistance. And you know what? That was my issue. But this family, to no fault of their own, had to be displaced. And think about how they were going to afford temporary housing assistance, how they were going to afford to commute from point A to point B to C to D, how they were going to afford the cleaning up of their home, which now became a hazard to their life, because of their health.
Yeah.
And so there was no mechanism yet. Now, there's an opportunity for them to lay claim against the government or the instrumentality, but my goodness, what are we talking about? 90 days, 180 days, 18 months, 18 years?
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that I'll find a way to empower the administration to have access to resources so that if you come as a fault of the government, if a telephone pole fell on your house, that there will be immediate opportunity for assistance to relocate you, Senator, so that you don't have to compromise your family's ability to continue on their day-to-day life.
It's called common sense legislation. But let me ask you this. I'll go back a little bit, and maybe I'm digressing here a little bit, but you once worked, and you look up to, of course, Angel Santos on what he stood for. Let's go back a little bit. Chamorro Land Trust, voting rights. These are big issues. These are that are having actually international attention at this point. Your stance on this, and of course, moving forward, the governor appealing the district court's decision, and also, of course, not succumbing to the Department of Justice's. In terms of regards to Chamorro Land Trust.
Okay, so well, thank you. We're going straight to the heart of some of the very controversial topics. So I make no qualms. I make no exceptions. As a matter of fact, I stand firm, and I've always been consistent in my position about who I am as an individual. Chamorro. And ginutunga hati tu untunga na gagio gi inohu gi inetnon lalahing guahan gi inota, right? That's our organization. And I'm very passionate about Chamorro rights. Now, I even had the opportunity to speak to a high school class at a local high school. And I even said, if it were me, I'm not speaking for you, but if it were up to me, I would even surrender my personal right to vote if my parents can be guaranteed a distinct privilege to make a decision for a generation nearly gone. And I likened it to a very simple analogy. You're on the beach, a boat comes in, you welcome your visitor. Please come on in. Our own hospitality. It's not just a Chamorro way, it's the Pacific way. And then this visitor brings a family, and then they populate in their house, in your house, and your family of your husband and wife and child, and they have 4 children. And one day they say, guess what? We want to vote on how to dispose of this property. And I'm looking at my wife saying, all of a sudden, it becomes everyone's home. And so I think that opportunity belongs to a great Chamorro people to finally be asked, whatever direction you're going. I'm not going to advocate for any one direction. Personally, I'm a statehood supporter, but at least grant them the opportunity, grant us the opportunity to make a decision for ourselves on where we want to go. There's a tremendous reservation out there. There's a tremendous blowback in terms of we're going back into the Stone Ages. We're not going to make informed decisions. There'll be rampant corruption. That assumes that you're going independence and without any regulations. I think we should give ourselves the benefit of the doubt. For me, I want to fully leverage our opportunity as perhaps as a state within the union with 2 voting U.S. senators and a congressional delegate based on population.
No, and I agree. There's one thing they agree, and and there's nothing wrong to be a nationalist. Nothing wrong with that, and promote, of course, the nationalistic view. But also, hey, I want to be a bigger part of this American family. But there are other again statuses out there. There's free association and there's independence, and that was one of the things that I hope last gathering at Adelaide was that we all come together as one, regardless of what status you wanted. That we need to move forward. We needed to vote. We needed to vote. We're not at the point of campaigning for a status. We're at the point of getting to the right to vote for the particular status.
And we can talk about the multiple strategies to address that.
Yeah, but we're gonna take a quick break for the folks on Radio World here. We're gonna continue with our live streaming folks, so we'll be back after a little bit with radio, but live stream we're continuing to be on with you. Okay.
Sure, if I could pick up, a topic that didn't receive unanimous support in the legislature was relative to we the people and our advocacy for supporting U.S. citizens abroad and their ability or their right to vote for president, regardless of where they're staying. And a lot of people felt that, well, not a lot, but a few people said you're compromising our approach to requesting for Chamorro self-determination. And actually, my response was no. I really believe that if you support certain rights of certain peoples, that the federal government then would have to take a step back because of the fights on many fronts relative to this issue, whether it's our term of self-determination or United Citizens Abroad, regardless of where they're at. I don't think that they can defend a fight on a double standard issue on multiple fronts in multiple forums.
Now, let me ask you this as well, because you had why did you guys allow? I don't mean you personally, but I guess the leadership and the legislature at the time. You had resolutions sponsored by, of course, Senator Teresa Turlai. Okay, in regards to I think it's just moral land trust and supporting moving forward in regards to the governor's challenging the district court decision. Now you had all these folks that testified, and when I looked at the folks that testified, these were folks that have been adamant about voting rights and moral land trust. This wasn't anything new. I mean, they didn't need notes. These folks have been there. I mean, they helped craft all these things.
Absolutely. Former Senator Hope Cristobal was in the audience. Former Senator Casper.
But let me ask you, because you had one senator in Senator Mike Nicholas that said this was kind of cramming things down at I guess senators' throats, and so he didn't agree. So he walked out. And why was he excused from the vote? Why did leadership allow him excused from the vote? Why didn't they call for a roll call? And because this is you guys were elected to make the hard and tough decisions. Now, I don't think this was such a hard and tough decision. These things have been talked about for years. And why did the leadership allow, again, a member to be excused, who was there, who just happened to walk out because he didn't agree?
I certainly can't speak for that senator or the majority leadership. What I do know is that the minority Republican senators who were there were unified, and we knew where we needed to be, not just as a party, but definitely as a legislative body, representative of the people, direct representatives of the people. So insofar as where that senator weighed in, I can't speak for him or the majority leadership, but what I can tell you is that we received a majority of the votes necessary to move forward on a time-sensitive matter that really can make all the difference in moving forward.
Controversial issue again, situation here. I don't know if it's a controversy, but I want to hear your stance on this. And we're speaking now. You have a Republican bill, or a proposed Republican bill. I don't know if there's a bill already to your Republican colleagues that introduced a bill. I think 2 different bills. But it, in essence, kind of called for a part-time legislature. One of the bills I read is really not part-time. I mean, I'm going to pay you monthly, okay, and so X amount of dollars. So it's not really part-time. But your thoughts on that? Because I mean, I'm like, really?
We have so there are 2. Thank you for bringing that up. It's if there's one thing I can appreciate as a freshman lawmaker, it's the opportunity to stand firmly on what you believe in, regardless of your partisan affiliation. So, notwithstanding who introduced it, I am very firm on my position on both the part-time legislature and, frankly, as a social studies teacher, I take strong reservation against watering down the importance of a third and equal branch of government by having representatives of the executive and the judicial branches represent themselves in a part-time legislature while maintaining a full-time position in the other branches. Now, let's talk about the first one. I've held this belief as far back as when I was supporting the late Senator Angel Santos and a principled man in Dr. David Leongo Shimazu. And I always held my position that there's nothing part-time about the issues facing the people of Guam. We are at a really interesting point in our lives, in my generation, and in defense of a generation about to pass on all of the reins. Right? We're talking about political self-determination, Senator. We're talking about American political and military posture in the Western Pacific. We're talking about a lot of issues relative to natural resources. We're talking about a people who are suffering also. There's an entire demographic in this island, Senator, that are suffering. And maybe, if you relegated my job, this job of senator, to simply passing an appropriations bill, maybe I would consider that. Okay, maybe. But as long as I define a senatorial role to be one of leadership, actually, it's not restricted to senators. I think the governor, the senators, any elected and appointed official of the people of Guam have a moral and professional duty to lead And leadership requires identifying solutions. It requires sacrifice. It doesn't require you to take time out, punch out from your job, whether you're a lawyer or a server, a waiter, and to pass an appropriations bill, Senator. You have to think creatively. You have to build consensus. That's leadership. That's my perspective. I can go into this whole discussion about how I think that by doing that, we're going to achieve the reverse. And I don't want to get a semantical debate with my colleagues, but I'm firm in this belief that you are going to severely compromise an individual's ability to make an independent decision if you're the waiter and got to check back in. Imagine you're an accountant. Let's say, for example, a great agency like Department of Administration. You're an accountant too, and then you go in and you pass. You first of all you introduce the legislation for your budget, and then you pass the budget. And then guess what? You got to go back to work and report to your boss and your boss's bosses, who happens to be the governor of Guam, about your position. Now, what about a private sector employee?
Sure.
Right? Doesn't that amplify the conflict? That's one. So I think that this is an opportunity to maintain the status quo for full-time representation, to insulate the person, to make a hard decision without fear of reprisal. You should be able to make a hard decision and not worry about looking your boss in the eye when it worked against him or her.
Well, I think that semantical argumentation or persuasion, whatever you may call it, is going to happen because I think that's going to be introduced, if not already introduced.
It is introduced, and let me just say this for my team. I have a hard-working team, and we work every day, even when there was threat that we wouldn't have a continuing budget because we didn't have a carryover or lapses, etc. They work day, they work night. They worked the entire weekend 2 weeks ago to write for a competitive grant, okay? We can't even find enough hours in a day to address the 50 constituents that have come before this office in less than 100 days.
Sure.
Now, I don't know what the rest of my colleagues do, and I'm sure they're putting just as much effort, I hope, right? I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, but let there be no doubt in your mind that when I pop that tent up on the side of the road and those 7 to 12 people come every afternoon between 4:30 and 7 o'clock p.m., that those hours and their concerns don't require your part-time thoughts and considerations. They require full-time attention to solutions. Now I want to get to the second issue because I'm even just as passionate about that. Man, we look back, and you go back to the Middle Ages, where they address this issue of bourgeoisie versus the proletariat, the poor versus the working versus the capitalist, the privileged aristocratic class. And we're talking about 350 years that our forefathers of this still perfecting nation worked so hard to protect each branch of government from having too much influence over the other. And now, in the stroke of a pen, because a couple folks want to challenge the paradigm, feel that it's okay that an accountant and that a lawyer from the judiciary, or maybe even a marshal, okay, gets to serve in the legislature. You're going to see, in my humble opinion, DOA versus GDOE versus an employee of this magnanimous company versus an employee of that special interest group. You're going to have them overtly coming out and campaigning for themselves and their agency and or those private businesses. You have to draw the line. The need for oversight and separation of powers must be preserved, in my humble opinion.
Hey, we're going to take a quick break here. Are we still going to be live streaming, or we're going to be okay? That's going to be it. Thank you very much for our live stream audience. Thank you very much, Senator Wil Castro. Of course, we're going to continue for a little bit because I know you have to get to a meeting. We're going to continue a little bit with our radio folks, at least for another 10 minutes or so. There's a couple other questions I need to ask. If
I have
already,
time.
Hey, but let me ask for our listeners here, our viewers here. You're sounding very congressional.
Oh gosh.
Okay, we need a strong Republican congressional. Can I talk to you over the break?
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll be right back.